Hey everyone, my name is Akshay. I am a PhD student at the University of Neuchatel. I'm making this video today to share with you my experience of getting a visa, getting through the residence permit process, getting settled into Switzerland, finding an apartment, getting health insurance, finding what SIM is best for me, finding what rental insurance plan is best for me, and all of these sort of nitty-gritty things about admin which people don't often talk about, but it is quite essential to sort of get your feet on the ground while you're studying here. And so the aim is that through this, I can sort of share with you my experience. I will caveat this by saying that in many places it was quite annoying and fairly circular. It also relies a little bit, a large extent, unfortunately, on some amount of financial security that you already have, because in the first month of getting there, you might not already be paid. So before you reach and start your position, you won't be paid. And so you might have to shell out money from your savings to get a residence permit because that costs money, and get the other things done. Now, of course, that being said, the salary that PhD positions offer within Switzerland is more than sufficient. It's you can live very comfortably with that salary, but this initial investment to sort of, even for the visa process to get till the embassy of Switzerland wherever you are, it can be a little bit financially draining. I will also add that the target audience for this video is folks who are moving in from abroad into Switzerland to pursue their studies. These studies can be both the PhD and the masters, although during the course of the video you're going to hear me say PhD because that's what's applicable to me, but the same sort of fundamentals apply for the masters as well. The same process applies. So if you're a master's student, stick around, this will help you. And finally, it is a great place to be, to do science. It's worth it. So yeah, that's my sort of story, and I hope this video helps you as well. Sorry about the double introduction to this video. There might be some repetitive segments in the next 1 minute or so. That's because I made this starting part of the video at the end when I wanted to add some caveats. But in any case, I hope this helps everyone out there. Let's dive right into it. Hi everyone. Today I'm going to share with you some tips and tricks that I've sort of gained experience with as I went through the process of getting my visa and settling into Switzerland as I started my PhD. So this process was fairly complicated and unnecessarily circular, but my hope is that through this video, things will be a little more clearer for you and you don't have to spend too much time or stress too much about the administrative side of things as you settle into Switzerland. So to kick things off, first talking about the visa that you need to start your PhD. This is different from a Schengen visa, which is what most short-term students and tourists would get. So that's only for a period of 90 days, and you obviously, for a PhD or a master's, would need more than that. And so the kind of visa that you need is something called a Type D visa, which is a national Swiss visa. It's not something that the whole Schengen area provides you. So the form for this is available online, and I will also add a link in the description of this video. You can get all the supporting documents that you need. There's a clear list that the Embassy of Switzerland provides to us, and we just have to collate that document. After this, what you have to do is basically get 3 sets of this form along with 3 sets of the supporting documents. You then have to book an appointment at the VFS Center in Delhi, which is the Swiss embassy itself. And essentially what you then have to do is be a sort of delivery person. And so you have to fly into Delhi, visit this visa application center, which is at the embassy itself, and submit these documents. Now, in my particular case, and I think in most cases, there was no interview round per se. So they're not going to ask you anything about why you want to do this, about the country, nothing of that sort that maybe the US might have. And so all you have to do is submit these documents. They're not going to do any biometrics at that point in time. All you're going to do is submit these and come back. So you could literally just plan a 1-day trip to Delhi, submit this and come back. That's what I did. Now, once you've submitted this, the process doesn't end there. This form is then forwarded to the canton in which you are going to be working at. Now, the university that you've been accepted into will be part of some canton. A canton is like a state, and Switzerland has a lot of cantons. And depending on which canton you're going to, your form will be physically sent to that canton. Now, what that canton will then do internally is verify with your employer if you have a job or not. And once all the checks and balances are sort of taken care of, and that they know you're fully legal and you're actually coming to start a PhD, it's not that much of a hassle. Although I will admit, if you plan to stay in one canton and work in a different canton, it's slightly more complicated. This is what happened to me because I work in Neuchatel, but I stay in Bern. And so it took a while to sort of communicate with the cantonal authorities that I don't really have a job inside Bern, but I'm getting paid because of my PhD position in Neuchatel. And so if you're doing something like this, you might also face difficulty. Even otherwise, I think it's a very good idea for you to continuously follow up with the admin, the visa authorities of the canton. That's, in my case, they were called Fremdenpolizei, which in English translates to alien police, but that's not what it means. They're quite friendly. You can email them, you can call them, and I sort of almost spammed them to a point where they knew my name personally when I called them at the end of it. And so there's no harm in doing that. You keep following up on it until you get it, and you should get it in 2 to 3 months if you do all of this. And if everything goes smoothly, you will get it within a month. But if there are some issues with one person checking with another person if you have a job and that person doesn't get back, those sort of complications can delay. But in any case, it's a very good idea to keep following up. Once they have confirmed that you have this, they will provide you something called an authorization. Now, the authorization is just a document that you have to then email to the Delhi embassy, the Swiss embassy in Delhi, with this authorization and say that, hey, I've gotten my authorization from the canton in Switzerland. When can I come give my biometrics? And what they will then tell you is they will send you an email which says you need to go to your nearest VFS center and give all your biometrics and your passport. Then what happens is you go to this place wherever it is closest to you. So for me, it was in my city itself. And so I went to the VFS center, gave my biometrics, submitted my passport. The passport then goes to the Swiss embassy in Delhi, in my case. And then they print your actual visa and send it back. So this is all the things that you have to do to secure the type D visa that you need to get yourself into the country of Switzerland. But once you're there, you also have a fairly complicated process ahead of you to sort of register yourself with the city and other things. So one thing that I would like to note is you would need an accommodation when you just arrive. And so for that, in my case, in Bern, there is a student lodge. It's called the Student Lodge, which is quite convenient. You can book it online. You can come for a set period of time. And in my case, it was 2 months. And so you can come for that period of time and then sort of check out. And by that time, you can find a house. So it's very convenient as an immigrant student to come live in that student lodge for some time as a temporary accommodation and then carry on. So you can look into student lodges or Airbnbs for the short term as soon as you're here to have a roof over your head. So with this temporary accommodation and your visa being in place, you are now fully set to arrive in Switzerland. Once you get to the temporary accommodation, the first order of business is to get a residence permit. What you need as a PhD student is a type B residence permit. It's a yearly permit. And what you typically have to do for this is you've already established contact by this time with the Fremdenpolizei, which is the immigration department of the city. Now, once you've established this contact, you basically enter Switzerland, you submit a scan of the the stamped passport entry and the visa that you came into Switzerland with. You also tell them the address that you're staying at right now. After this, they will guide you to a site where you can book an appointment with this authority. You go for this appointment, they will check your passport, they'll check your visas, do all the checks that they have to do, and then you will have to pay a fairly hefty fee of around 250 to 300 francs at most. Some cantons, I'm told, is cheaper, but at most it's like 250 francs, which is what I had to pay. Right now, this fees includes what they will do for your biometrics. So you give your fingerprints, you also get your photo taken, and of course they have your address. Using this, within the next 2 weeks, they will print a residence permit and post it to you, right? So you get it by post and you keep that safe. So that's important. Why is that important? Is because your residence permit is pretty much the document that's going to be linked to everything. Now let's see the first sort of linkage and use case that you have for this document. The first thing is that now you're in a temporary accommodation, right? And you need to find a more permanent one. You need to get an apartment. Finding an apartment in Switzerland is a little bit challenging because there's not too many apartments going around. So what you typically do is, first you go on to a portal like Flatfox, which is what we used. You find apartments that you like on Flatfox in your budget. You schedule a viewing of these apartments. You go to these apartments, have a look. They will give you a QR code or a form. What you then have to do is fill in this form or the corresponding form via the QR code. You fill this in, and then you have to send it by email to the renting body, which is the sort of manager of the apartment. So you have to send it in. Now, what do you have to send along with this form? So one document obviously is the filled form with all your details. You also have to send a copy of your residence permit. You have to send them something called a Betreibung Registrarauszug, which is, I mean, it might translate differently in French or Italian depending on where you're living in Switzerland. But what it basically is it's a certificate that certifies that you are not in debt or have a criminal history. So what you have to do for this is basically give your residence permit number to the Betreibung Register sort of department, which you can find. So that's not too hard. You can look up the department that issues these things and contact them. You need to pay a fee of around 20 francs, after which they will look up your name in the register and extract a certificate that says that you have no criminal record. Now that's important. So basically you send these 3 documents, which is the form that you filled for the renting agreement, the residence permit that you have, and the no crime certificate that I just described. Now in addition, because finding a house is so competitive in Switzerland, you can also create a separate document, which is just a 2-page like PPT, almost like a PDF, which just introduces you. You put a photo of yourself, you put a speech bubble saying, hey, I work and so and so, I have a stable job, maybe I don't smoke, maybe whatever qualities you want to bring out, that you're quiet, you don't trouble the neighbors. You can bring those out in this small document, which is a 1-page or 2-page document at most, and add that in as well. This helps the sort of reviewer of your applications know you as a person and that what kind of a tenant you might be. So this is something that we got as a tip from our friends who lived in Bern, and that's quite useful. So I would recommend you to send this document in addition as well, right? So after sending these documents to potential renters, at some point, maybe 1 or 2 weeks later, you will hear back from them if you've gotten this house. Typically, we went for around 13 house viewings and we applied for 12, out of which I think we were offered 3. So that's the loose ratio that happened in our case. That aside, so this is one sort of process that's linked to your residence permit that you have to get in place once you're here, which is finding an apartment for the long term. Now, another thing that you have to do when you're here is to make a bank account. And this bank account obviously has to have something called an IBAN, which is like a bank account number, which is standard for the entire of the European Union. So to do this, the bank that I would recommend is something called Neon. Neon is a fully online bank It's like a tech interface of an actual bank that exists in Switzerland, which is called Hypotheker Bank Lenzburg. Now, Hypotheker Bank Lenzburg is a proper bank, and so your money is actually insured. If you have anywhere less than 100,000 francs, and if something happens to that bank, the Swiss government ensures that you will get your money back up to that limit of 100,000 francs, right? Now, Neon is the technological interface of that. So it makes things very simple. Everything is based on out of the phone. You get a nice card. It's a good app interface. And the entire thing is in English, which is very helpful as an immigrant because you might not speak any of the formal languages of Switzerland. So that's quite useful having Neon. The team is very responsive. You can communicate via phone or email on English. So that's fantastic. So get your Neon account once you land over here, right? Another caveat that I wanted to mention is apart from the bank account and the apartment that you will find, you also need a SIM. The SIM card that we chose is something called Gomo. Gomo again is a predominantly online system, which is why it's also cheaper because there's no outlets and so the company doesn't have to pay for that. So you're able to get unlimited for mobile network data, calls within Switzerland and messages, unlimited everything for around 12 francs a month. And this rate will not change in the long term. So that Gomo is a good solution if you want sort of mobile data for within Switzerland. There are other network providers which are more traditional. They're quite good. You can get them as well, but they're more expensive. So you can make that decision about what you want to do. So that's one thing. Now, these are the different things that you have to get in place once you reach Switzerland. Another thing that I wanted to sort of touch upon is once you're offered a house, once a renter gets back to you saying, hey, we're happy with your application, we want to give you the house, don't immediately say yes to the first house you get. Wait a little while. These renters know how the process is, so you can say no after some time. The only thing in this process that you have to know is if you don't reply, it's okay. Like you can reply saying, hey, we need some time. But if you reply saying, yes, sure, I'm in, so go ahead and write down the agreement is what you say to the renter, and the renter does it. In some cases, because they've invested time and resources into making this agreement, if you then cancel with them saying, hey, I don't want this house and I've not signed the agreement, so I'm not bound to pay you a rent or the deposit. So until you sign, you're not legally bound to give them your security deposit or your first month's rent or any of that. You're not bound by it. But if you say yes to them making an agreement, they can charge you a small amount, which is around 100 francs or so, which is not small, but they charge you 100 francs or so for the time that they spent making the agreement. So that's just a caveat you need to know. In the large scheme of things, it might seem small. So yeah, as long as you don't sign the agreement, you're not bound to pay the rent. So let's just get that out of the way. The final thing that you need in place as a student, master's or PhD, immigrant student, is your health insurance, which is mandatory. To do this, I again recommend something called Swiss Care. Now, Swiss Care again is designed for immigrant students. You can use it in English. It's very straightforward. It's relatively cheap compared to other plans. It's around 60 francs a month, but it's quite good. So go ahead and get your Swiss Care sort of insurance. To do this as an immigrant student, here's what I had to go through. I went to the Swiss Care website, I entered my details, paid the deposit. Once that's done with, you then will get a form that you have to fill from Swiss Care that you sort of sign and give it back to them along with your residence permit and the confirmation of your registration into a university. So you can, when you join a university, they will give you this confirmation. So you can just submit that as well, and then they will send you an approved document that says, yes, you are a beneficiary of this policy. That policy then has to be sent to another admin wing of your canton, which handles the insurance component of people. And so you need to basically tell them that, hey, I don't need the state insurance, which is given to Swiss citizens by the government. I don't want that. Like, I don't subscribe to that. But I have this alternate insurance as an immigrant called Swisscare. And so here's the confirmation for that. So once you give that, you are then legally fully set to sort of reside in Switzerland and do your PhD. The only thing that you need to do repeatedly is renew your residence permit every year. So 1 month before it expires, I'm told this by other people who are more experienced, 1 month before it expires. So mine would expire next January. And so from 2024 December, I will make sure you try to be within the boundaries of Switzerland so that you're able to get this admin thing done and get your permit. So if you're going back home or planning a visit for field work or something, try to be within the boundaries of Switzerland during that time as much as possible. Otherwise, you can always come up with other solutions, but it's a good idea to be within Switzerland for that period. So yeah, that's about all I had to share. Another small tip that I had would be that while you're sort of finding an accommodation, some places might ask you of insurance, and you can sort of rental insurance. And what you can do is, if you don't have the money to give a security deposit, there is also an option to get something called the rental insurance, where basically you pay a monthly amount to a company and they assure your renter that, hey, if this person doesn't pay, we will cover it, right? And so that's just an alternative to paying the deposit, because the deposit is a large amount. It might be around 2,500 to 3,000 francs worth of 2 months rent, basically, as a security deposit to your renter. And so having this insurance is a cheaper way of doing that, because immediately after you join, you might not have that much money. You have to buy all your furniture from IKEA and sort of build it yourself. So you don't really have too much money in the first few months. And so it might be a good solution for some people to get rental insurance instead of paying a hefty security deposit immediately, right? So that's just one thing that I wanted to flag out as well. A caveat that I think is fairly important to mention is that in all of these processes, I think you should first get your Gomo or Swiss SIM card number and give that number for all these processes, be it the residence permit, be it your bank account or any of this, because that simplifies things a lot. If you give your Indian number or your foreign number, they might raise some concerns with regards to whether you're actually staying within Switzerland. This happened to me because I gave my old number and they contacted me saying, hey, are you actually living in Switzerland? And I had to send a couple of forms by post. And so things can get a little more complicated if you give your Indian or sort of foreign number. So if you have a Swiss number, give that as your input number for all of these processes. So yeah, I really hope that my experience figuring this out, which was quite stressful and sometimes circular, helps other people. So which is why I'm putting this video out on YouTube. I hope it helps somebody out there who is going through the same process. Maybe it might not be exactly the same as what I went through, but the broad themes remain the same within the country of Switzerland. There might be cantonal differences, but yeah, I'm just putting it out there for public use. So yeah, I hope you have a great time studying here. This is my third time coming here to work and sort of do science, and it's quite cool. Like it's a nice place to be. So yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any. So yeah, best of luck for your studies and cheers.